Jennifer Bilek, prolific journalist, lots and lots of writing, but this is a book which brings lots of the most important or fantastic work that she's done. It was published in July 2024 by Spinifex Press. It's called Transsexual, Transgender, Transhuman: Dispatches from the 11th Hour. Jennifer Bilek is an investigative journalist who's tracked the funding of the gender industry for over a decade. She's the author of The 11th Hour, a platform highlighting the connections between technology, transsexualism, and transhumanism. Her research into the philanthropic backers of the gender industry has been used for legal briefs and platformed in myriad publications, films, and other media in the US and internationally. So welcome, Jennifer. How are you doing?
Oh, thanks for having me back, Joe. It's great to be here. I'm doing great.
That's great. And how is the book going? Have you had good sales and good feedback from it?
Absolutely. Yeah, it's going great. I'm really
Yeah.
happy.
Yeah. Well, I've got a copy of it here. I think because of my background, it might be hard to show it, but it's a fantastic book, available from Spinifex Press, and it brings together quite a lot of the articles that are in the 11th Hour blog. Can you tell us about why you wanted to bring these together into a book?
To give it a broader reach, my blog doesn't hit the mainstream public. So, and Spinifex came to me. I was actually working on a different book. And Spinifex, the gals at Spinifex Press, came to me and suggested, a compilation of everything that's on the blog. And I love the idea. I had actually thought about that previously at some point, and but I just veered off. And then they came to me and they asked me, and I was like, "Yay, love this," because it's really, it's very short, tight pieces. I mean, I know my attention span has really been changed in terms of reading, like books. So I thought this would be really, really good for people because it gets the information out in short chunks. It's also the information is pretty dense in terms of it covers a lot of ground.
Yeah.
And so to have them in short, tight pieces, I think is effective.
And there's a lot in there. I'm just going to read out some of the contents. So it starts with an introduction, and then it says, who are the rich white men institutionalizing transgender ideology? And then sort of slightly answering, well, and then it says big pharma, big tech, and synthetic sex identities. I'll read a couple more and then come back to ask what some of these things mean. Capitalism, the new left, and the gender industry. And then the gay rights movement has been hijacked by a radical transhumanist agenda. Then gender ideology, technology, and sexual trauma, a perfect transhumanist storm. And there's absolutely, I mean, I won't read all of them because there are 27 chapters, but the really great thing, as you've said, Jennifer, is they're quite short and they're quite diverse although it is all focused on the money and but this specific type of money. So I suppose in reading, and what I understand is you sort of think your chapter 8 is Martin Rothblatt, the founding father of the transgender empire. Is that what your sort of, you would say that he's pretty much the founding father?
Yes, as it's developed currently, the current iteration of what people call, transgenderism or transsexualism, as it's versioned into an industry. Yes, he would be the founding father of that,
Yeah. And what if,
because it's really his ideology at play, his fetish, as it has escalated and melded with uh, his vast experience in the tech field, and specifically reproductive technologies, biotechnologies. Yeah, so, and he's written about this. I mean, he's written about transsexualism, transgenderism as an on-ramp to transhumanism.
yeah,
And the the future of human reproduction via technologies, and also virtual realities.
Yeah. And from your in your understanding, what is it? I know you've said, but can you go into deeper into what you guess is driving him?
I would say the same thing that drives a lot of very wealthy men in the tech industry, which is a fear of death.
Yeah.
He's afraid of death. And when you're afraid of death and you're really, really invested in technologies, and that's how you spend all of your time, like in technology, um, you you remove yourself from life, from the biosphere, and its importance in
Yeah.
life. Yeah.
And I mean, so the fear of death, so he wants to transcend death, I guess, is that with the transhumanism. Do you think it's that he wants to like get body parts, like get a new body, inhabit a new body, or is he wanting to reproduce more of himself that's like through some of these new technologies or something else?
Well, I think he has a fetish,
Yeah,
and he's been working that fetish for a very long time. His sexual proclivities entail owning womanhood
yeah,
for himself. He has appropriated synthetic simulacrums of women's biology, and he runs around and calls himself a transhumanist transsexual. I don't think he's interested in just moving body parts around, though that's part of it, but he really wants to own womanhood. He wants to own um, the ability to create life.
yeah,
And he believes that we're doing that through technology. And on the way to that, um, you have to subordinate women, and you have to uh, somehow usurp their ability to gestate life.
yeah.
So, and this is happening with current reproductive technologies.
Yeah, so he wants to usurp it in terms of get further on so that they won't need women. Is that partly part of
Yes,
the thing?
I mean the whole transition from transsexual to transhuman is a technological one. I mean, transvestic fetishism used to, the men that engaged in this were perfectly comfortable just using costume and miming our mannerisms to work out their sexual kink, right? But as technologies developed to adopt synthetic simulacrums of our biology, then the technology moved, right? So they escalated. And then the internet came upon us, and these men had access to each other, and they formed strong coalitions, and they wanted to have recognition for and legal structure for their particular fetish. Um, but if you're if this is your thing, and then you have access to power, and you're like sort of a tech guru, and he's also a lawyer. He's sort of moved this along with the escalation of his fetish to owning womanhood again through reproductive technologies. So, and this now we move into the transhumanist phase. I mean, if you look at surrogacy, for instance, this is already a transhumanist reproductive technology. You now have three biological parents in some cases for a baby. You have a man's sperm, a woman's eggs, and another woman gestates this child. And they are all biological parents of this child. So now you have three biological parents of a human baby. So that's already a transhumanist reproductive technology.
Yeah,
And they're researching uh, developments in putting wombs into men. They're compartmentalizing our biology. They're teaching children, for instance, that they're not whole biological systems attached to the natural world, but they are compartmentalized commodities. They are now penises, breasts, vaginas, genes, hormones, sperm, ovaries, etc., etc. right? This is what they're learning in their schools. This is the transhumanist deconstruction of human reproduction.
Are you finding that they're also making a huge amount of money from it? So it's like a new sort of positive feedback loop that they create this new
Oh,
system and then
of
they
course.
it goes further
Yeah,
and further.
of course, of course. I mean, it's not like, I mean, in some cases, these are men sitting around deciding what's the next step, right?
Yeah.
Like the ones that, like Rothblatt and uh, Christine Burns and Stephen Whittle, who's a woman, sitting around talking about legal structure for dissociation from sex reality. They created this legal structure. They call them gender bills now.
What's a
Um,
gender build?
so
Oh, gender bill, like a piece of
bills, yes,
legislation. Yeah.
yes, exactly. So, so there are some men sitting around deciding what's going on, but the rest of it is really just, you put this into the market now and it becomes very profitable. So it just takes off of its own accord, right?
Yeah.
And then it becomes competing ads, competing marketing. Everybody wants to jump on the bandwagon for this transgender person, right? Which is a total fiction. It's a total illusion. It's a corporate, ad for body dissociation,
Yeah.
grooming us all, towards acceptance of these of our entire selves being reduced to, reproductive commodities.
Why don't they just do the fetish at home? Why, or in little groups? What is it about this global domination, and then the silencing of women? Why do they need to do that, do you think?
These men want validation of themselves as women. They want to be the creators of life.
Yeah.
And they have the opportunity now with advancements in technology to do that. It's power. How do you
Yeah.
explain, power over the world and this drive? It's a sort of emptiness, like it's an emptiness. I mean, the natural world really fulfills us. It's what it's there. It's there. It supports us, and we support it. We're integrally connected with it, and this sustains us, and it's a beautiful thing, right? But if you remove yourself from that process, then you don't get the reward of being part of this system, right? So you have to continually fulfill yourself. You're like an addict, so you keep going further and further and further. You want control. You have to control, and they
Yeah.
want to control nature, and women are always the stand-in for nature, because they gestate the species. So women must be subordinated just like the natural world.
What do you think the end goal in like one of the ways this could play out? What would women's role be in their ideal scenario? If they get exactly what they want, what are they going to have us?
Rothblatt's transsexual transhumanist cult is really geared towards a singularity, where we're not even living in part of the biological world, but we are in a singularity and we are in cyberspace. We live there. So that's his ultimate goal.
Yeah.
We are data, we are mindware. And, most of the technologies out there move in this direction, so, he sounds like a nut, like an absolute, he's nutty like a psychopath is nutty. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And the
And in
fact,
control of a lot.
he has the ear of many, many powerful people, and they listen to him because he has had such substantial successes in the technology field, the pharmacy field, the biotechnology field. People listen to him and they think, oh, they listen to this. Oh, let's just break the binary between the sexes. This is so good. This will, obliterate sexism.
Have you written about the funding of political parties and big parts of the media? Like we in Britain, I've heard that the Guardian got some funding from Big Pharma and the Liberal Democrat Party got some funding. Have you got some blogs on that influencing parties and the media?
I do. Basically, the media is controlled by big pharma and big tech here in America. I mean, it's just what it is, and the pharma industry is, or the medical industry in total, I would say, is, on par in terms of revenue with the war machine, with the military. So it's a substantial beast.
And oil, I
and,
guess, is a big one as well.
and oil,
Uh,
yes.
maybe the what is it, like the three
The
nights of the
trifecta.
apocalypse or whatever. There was a question. Would you please ask Jennifer about the difficulty of accessing mainstream media? Um, it's dangerous not to hear her research more widely.
I don't think there's been a left platform that has published my work. And even the publications on the right, they only go so far in what they're willing to put out. I would say that's not particularly true for some independent platforms, but certainly the mainstream media. They critique transgenderism, but they don't critique the concept of a transgender person, right?
Yeah,
Which doesn't
which you,
exist. It's a corporate fiction. But they all
yeah,
keep, they all keep talking about it as if it's a settled premise. Do you know what I mean? So
yeah.
even the right who critiques this only goes so far.
What's your feeling about how to get your message? I mean, your incredibly important research out. What do you do to try to do that?
Well, different people have gone in different directions. Right now, I'm doing a lot of podcasts that are sort of alternative media, because I think alternative media is our best bet at this point.
Yeah,
So I'm doing smaller podcasts and also trying to just keep people in on that level because information travels. I mean, Twitter, for all its downsides, is really a great platform in terms of my having gotten messages around because even though I'm shadow banned on there, other people see my work and they take it forward, people that aren't shadow banned. So my work has been able to get all around the world because of that, which is pretty extraordinary. So I just do the work and I put it out there for as much as I can, and I let other people take care of the rest. Work too hard to, let me try and, get on this platform. You know what I mean?
Elon Musk sort of doesn't, well, he doesn't believe that you can change sex, and he is a tech transhumanist as far as I can see, and he wants to make the possibility that men like him can go and live in outer space, or that wants to transcend life in a way. And is but he doesn't seem to be going along this line with the medicalization and the transgender ideology. So why, in what makes him different from Martin Rothblatt?
Well, we have to realize, and I probably haven't made this clear enough, that transhumanism is a pretty big field. There's a lot of different transhumanists, and a lot of people come at that in different ways. Some people think about it and think about the ethics around that, and they don't take it to this absolute zenith of human sexual objectification like Rothblatt has done. I mean, he has a particular cult that is transsexual transhumanism. Yeah, where he is targeting human reproduction, to be usurped by the tech sector and eventually obliterated. His goal on the way to that, on the way to cyberspace, is melding us with technology um, completely, like cyborgification. Yeah. And gender rights are really the legal framework, the gestational phase of AI rights, because these robots and these people that are already have been augmented are going to need special rights to live in the world amongst us. Because say like a robot isn't really sex, they're assigned a sex, right? And they're going to be working and moving in the world, right? So if it's built like a female robot, or let's say it's built like a male robot, right? Because it works on a farm. And if the robots are made to look like us, we become more attached to them, right? And we see them as us, as a part of us, right? As another citizen, kind of, right? So now will this man robot, looks like a man, will this male robot be able to go into the female bathroom? Will it think like a man thinks since it's been programmed by men? Or will it have its own uh thinking circuity?
Wow.
Yeah, so yeah,
And
this is where all these these things are going. And, you know, the gender industry really grooms us, because you can't just lay this out on the public the way that we see ourselves now. You have to groom the public to accept these things. So if you can, you know, groom people to think of themselves in parts, you know, their whole system, their whole anatomical system in parts and as commodities, then you're halfway there. Yeah. And
Yeah.
especially children who they're just wildly, blatantly, brazenly indoctrinating in schools and all throughout society. Wherever they are, this message is there. You can
Yeah.
create yourself with technology.
And it's interesting because I talk to quite a lot of young women, girls, and they almost all believe in a woman's right to choose. They believe we should have the right to abortion, and they also think we should have the right to surrogacy, the right to have surrogate kids. And they're very adamant. They're just as vehement that it is a right to have surrogacy as, and I sort of think, whoa, that happened very effectively, didn't it? Sort of under the radar, that young women now all accept, pretty much as far as I could see, they pretty much all accept surrogacy and think it's a human right for them to, and everybody should be having that. And that's absolutely the media are really normalizing. So you're sort of thinking the next step is going to be AI rights and robot rights
Oh,
under as
sure.
part
Oh,
of human
absolutely.
rights.
They
It's just
already
going to,
have rights in Chile for augmented humans. You
yes,
know, I mean, because people are being genetically manipulated already, and so these things are just going to continue to escalate and develop. Yeah.
yeah,
And you know, you asked me about Musk and his positioning in all of this. You know, I think that, you know, he perceives himself as a good transhumanist. You know, he's not all about this crazy deconstruct sex stuff, right? He's coming at it, he's a pretty creative individual. I think he's really coming at it from a position of, you know, he just wants to, you know, do whatever we can, you know, to advance technologies, because that's his field, right? And if you can, why shouldn't you?
yeah,
Right? And he's, you know, he's tweeted before that he thinks it would be great. He thinks it will be great when we can all choose whether or not we want to be cyborgs. Whereas Martin Rothblatt, he just wants to leap on over all of that.
one of the things Mary Daly said is that there's this sort of very, very deep lack of meaning that she sort of argues a lot of men have, and that there's a massive hatred of women and our creativity and our link to nature, and that sort of drives. I mean, it's similar to what you've said, but sort of laid out a bit differently. But how many of these people also are driven by a hatred? Oh, I know, I'm asking psychology again, of women, like just hating us, or being envious of us, of women naturally giving birth. Or do you think it's not, that's not the biggest push?
Environmental philosopher Derek
Mm,
Jensen said that if you, or he might have even been quoting somebody else, but he said if you hate something long enough, it can feel like love, you know. And I think that these men are, again, when you remove yourself from the natural world, you know, and you know the natural world is really just procreation and death. It's a regenerative cycle, right? But if you remove yourself from that, you're going to fear death, basically. You know, that removal process, because being part of that process, you understand that process, life and death, and you're not so terrified of it. But the further away you get from it, you know, the more you want to control this thing because you're afraid to die, right? Um, and so I think that's really the impetus behind all of this, probably at its core. And hating women is just business. You know, it's business. They're in the way. You know,
yeah,
it's downstream of business. Yeah.
yeah,
And all slavery really works like that. You know, you have to, you know, deconstruct the humanity of somebody that you want to enslave. You know, you have to do that. Otherwise, other people aren't going to let you do that, right?
I mean, I think one of the things I've thought is rather, it's good to follow the money, but also follow the middle-aged women to total obscurity. That I think one of the reasons, I mean, they want to get rid of us middle-aged women because we're old enough to have lived and experienced the horrors, and we are different. We are a barrier to this. And how come, I mean, have you been massively attacked by the powers that you're exposing?
Basically just censorship. I mean, I'm shadow banned on Twitter. I'm shadow banned everywhere. I was deplatformed from myriad platforms, the left forum in New York City being a very significant one early on. And like, I think it was 2000, I don't know, 2014, 15, maybe it was 16. I can't remember now. But, I had a whole, I had just collated my research and wanted to put it out to the public to see if I was moving in the right direction, you know, um, about the money and power behind this thing. And so I uh, applied for a platform at the Left Forum, which is a platform in New York City that runs for 3 days, and it discusses, people talk about everything on the left side of politics. So I had been in there before and done some conferences on the environment. And so I figured it was kind of a shoe-in, but I really picked the wrong title because I mean, I explicitly said what I wanted to talk about and they accepted it actually, but then they got inundated with calls from PRAs and they shut it down.
Were you surprised?
Uh, I was kind of surprised because I had gotten in, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? And then they shut it down. So I was really pissed off. But I also knew very clearly, oh, okay, so I'm on the right path, you
Yeah,
know.
wow. And I know this is a tiny bit off topic, but how come you're so happy? You're laughing so much, and like in all the interviews I've been watching, ready for this, so you're really having a good time most of the time. How does that happen?
I love exposing these people. I love it. I love it.
Oh,
People think
wow.
I'm very altruistic. I'm doing this for humanity. I really love this.
Oh,
I
that's
mean, what
brilliant.
else are we going to do,
Yeah,
but fight for our humanity? Yeah, I
yeah.
mean, sometimes it's like, I mean, I wake up with like a massive anxiety sometimes. But I flip it around. The way to flip it around, I mean, as an artist, I know this is to send it back out, to transform that anxiety into something else and move. When you're in hell, keep moving. It's like my favorite motto.
Yeah.
You have to keep moving. You have to do things to ameliorate the stress and the absolute horror show that this is.
I mean, that's so fundamental. It's like a different way of being happy. Well, definitely not take antidepressants. Like, do brave activism against the forces of evil is just, I mean, if everyone watching this, look how happy Jennifer is. We should all be doing. We could get that happy too by doing
Well, I
this.
mean, a lot of people, I mean, women, like, they meet up and they have these conferences and they do these actions and they're happy to be together and they're happy to fight. That's what that is.
Yeah.
It's like you ameliorate, the horror of this by reclaiming your humanity.
Right. Michael O'Flaherty is a big wig in a lawyer, ex-Catholic priest, probably was the person who wrote the Yogyakarta Principles in Europe, and he's very significantly changing a lot of law. Does he come up in your research?
Who is he?
He's called Michael O'Flaherty. He's an Irish human rights lawyer. Now I think he might be the top human rights in terms of the human rights uh, in Europe.
I think he was part of my unwinding of the Arcus Foundation and John Stryker, which
Yeah,
is the major LGBT NGO in the United States, which is driving gender ideology globally. He's
yeah,
heir to John Stryker's heir to a $133 billion medical corporation, Stryker Medical, which is in like 70 different countries. Um, and he has built a political apparatus to drive this ideology through other LGBT organizations and the culture. All these cultural institutions, the churches, the military, the everything. I mean, everything that you can think of culturally. He's got money,
Yeah.
being sent there to drive the ideology. And he
I mean,
specifically said, if you don't accept this ideology, we're moving forward. If you don't accept this ideology, you don't get your funding.
yeah.
Yeah, and he uses his stock from his fortune. He's heir to this medical corporation. He uses his stock to support Arcus Foundation. That's how everything is funded, and he creates the political infrastructure for that. And O'Flaherty is, is it O'Flaherty or O'Flaherty or whatever the hell his name
Yeah.
is. Yeah, he's part of that whole thing.
You mentioned at some stage you think it's a castration fetish. I mean, and linked to that question, everybody should read this book. Jennifer is a brilliant writer. It's a joy reading.
Oh, thanks.
You know your turn of phrase, and it's fun and it's quite light. Like as we're seeing in this interview, it's not sort of grim reading it. It's quite, but it's very, very well written. There's a lot of really clear phrases, and you're quite inventive as well. You don't hold back when you're thinking it's something, which it makes it very new. And you're always coming up with new ideas. But this, I didn't. So the castration fetish sort of doesn't. It's sort of part of it. But what can you explain that?
Well, again, this ideology is cult ideology crafted by Martin Rothblatt. And it's absolutely a castration cult. I mean, children are being castrated, literally. And this is towards a transcendence. He believes that if we deconstruct the binary, the sex binary, not just metaphysically or not just linguistically, legally, socially, but literally, if we deconstruct this binary, then we will be liberated. We will transcend our humanity. So this is this is how it is, a religious castration cult. His cult is called terrorism, by the way. He actually has a religion called terrorism that advocates for this.
So what is their explanation of why this is supposed to be so great?
Well, women will be liberated from giving birth. It's a big responsibility, right? They're going to be liberated from giving birth because machines will do it for them,
Yeah.
right? We're already on that track, right? And for children, it's more of an indoctrination for that process, for the technological usurpation of human reproduction, to think of themselves as commodities. And they haven't a clue, of course, that they're being corporatized, that they're just being, completely indoctrinated with marketing, like that is so penetrating that it's, escalated into a cult. And if we keep going, we're going to have a virtual reality. It won't be long now. It's like right on the cusp now. To living in a virtual reality. People are talking about transgender people all over the world.
Yeah.
It's absolutely mind-bendingly, stupid. There are no people that have transcended their sex reality or their humanity thus far. They're talking about biological men, cis women. What are you positioning these things against? Like that construct is not real.
Mm.
It's not real, and people have to start calling that out.
Yeah.
What's a woman? No. What's a transgender person? How about, being interviewed and asking that question? What is a transgender person? And why
Yeah.
are rights being built for people, human rights are being built for people that want to disavow their humanity, their sex humanity? That doesn't make much sense, does it? Why not ask an interviewer that when they're interviewing you, instead of just going along with the premise and asking and answering the question? No?
Yeah. And I think that language is really useful. I mean, it's very worrying that lots of the not even gender critical, gender slightly concerned sort of layer of this gender concerned, they're creating a space for themselves, aren't they? That where they can be the voice of reason. Like we don't want to upset any transgendered kids,
Exactly.
they'll say, and they are going to get funding. I think that probably, but they're going to be, unfortunately speaking for us in many
Yes,
situations. And so
they
we just
already
have to
are.
keep going on, don't we? Yeah.
Yes.
And then it looks as if there's a debate between two sides, whereas actually we're out of it. Could Jennifer say more about three biological parents in surrogacy? I think I understand, but maybe not. How is that three biological parents?
Well, that's not always the case. Sometimes, uh, it's the woman's eggs who's giving birth to the child, gestating the child. But that's not always the case. Um, Sometimes it's a woman's eggs, a man's sperm, and those are implanted into a third person, a woman, to gestate a child. Now, this child is growing in her body. It belongs to her. It is part of her organs, right? She is a parent of this baby. The woman who has offered her eggs in this transaction, and it is a consumerist transaction, is also the parent of this baby. And the father who's donated his sperm is also the father of this child. When I first started, researching this, people weren't nearly up to speed like they are now, but they're really getting up to speed. And people are also getting very sick of what's going on. They feel the tyranny behind this and they don't understand why it's so tyrannical. And there's so much information out there, and this doesn't really appear to the mainstream because of the censorship. And Kara Dansky, everybody knows Kara Dansky. She's always saying that if we can be heard, we'll win. And that's really true. We are so censored in the mainstream media. And really, a lot of the alternative media is men, and they see this as such a big deal because it's radical feminists that are out front and center, clamoring about this. They think it's just women.
Like, I was watching a thing of two, Winston Marshall and another, that Christian guy, Calvin something. And Calvin said, oh yeah, that's an argument of the radical feminists. And Marshall went, shh, don't mention them.
It's presented and framed as a women's issue. So now it's a women's issue against trans rights. But there are no trans rights because there are no transgender people. Yeah. There are only people that think or want to be outside the borders of our human species.
I don't understand what you mean by transgender people not existing. I mean, there are people who take hormones and have surgery and live as the opposite sex, ... So that's exactly. So what do you mean by that?
What does living as the opposite sex mean? How do you do that? How do you live as the opposite sex? It's not about these people that are doing this to, create this theater, this performance of there being a person outside the borders of our sex species. It's about us. It's about changing us, changing our perceptions about our species sex. That's what all of this, infrastructure is about, and all these, this inundation with propaganda.
Yeah.
It's about changing us and our perceptions of ourselves so that we adopt and accept these new technologies. And transgenderism is the system changing us in terms of reproduction. There are other avenues of transhumanism, but this is the reproductive realm.
What is your suggestion for a tactic to get this ideology out of K-12 schools?
If you want to mobilize people, you have to tell them the truth. You have to stop drowning in, discussions of gender and gender dysphoria and gender expression and gender. It's not serving us. Bin the word. Talk about what it really is. If it takes a few more syllables, if it takes a few more words, explain to people what this is. Don't be afraid. I do it all the time. I mean, in my lay life, not just on podcasts and in my writing, but everywhere I go, I talk to people about this. They're like, well, what is this? Why is it like this? And I talk to them. It's advancing, human technologies in reproduction, reproduction. And it gets people to think about themselves and as commodities, as parts. It's easy. I mean, I live in a capitalist country, for God's sake. People understand commodities and breaking things apart so that they're more valuable, as commodities. It's simple. It just registers. They get it. When you start talking about identity and, some people feel this, and they just get it's like mishmash. You know what I mean? It's like a soup, and that's what it's meant to do. It's meant to confuse people and obscure what's actually transpiring here. This is very profitable.
Yeah.
It's very profitable from one end to the other. You're ruining people's health. You're going to have to fix them later on or now. You're dealing with people's fetishes. They're consumed with the idea of passing as the opposite sex. It doesn't just take, rearranging your reproductive organs. I mean, they get their clavicle shaved, they get their feet shaved, they get their legs shortened, their arms shortened, their brow, reconfigured, their jawline, they're this, they're that, and they're just you know, and then puberty blockers and hormones, cross-sex hormones. And you have research on these very special people that need these very special human rights, you
Mm.
know? And, you know, it just goes on and on and on, you know, and, you know, the reproductive market, you know, the tech reproductive market, you're sterilizing all these children. Who's going to give them children?